Welcome everyone to Choice Conversations, the podcast dedicated to helping you improve your life, one choice at a time. I'm your host, Chris Stefanik. Let's do this. Hey gang. I was recently a guest on the Life is Good podcast with Rob Aguilar. I thought you might like to hear it. Me and Rob talked about work-life balance. Is it possible to have it all? Definitely an interesting conversation. But before I get into that, I did want to let you know I just released a new free ebook. It's called Turning Arguments into Discussions. So as you might gather, it is about communication skills and how to peacefully resolve conflicts in your relationships, specifically a relationship with a significant other. The tactics used within this ebook do apply to pretty much any relationship you might have, be it coworkers, clients, children, parents, etc. But it's really specifically tailored towards a significant other. You know, in my experience, there's one thing that erodes a relationship that just wears you out, turning what would be otherwise a good relationship into one that, you just can't stand the person anymore, is not having a peaceful way to resolve conflict. So this will give you the tools to be able to do that. It's at discussions.choiceconversations.com. So discussions.choiceconversations.com. I will put a link to that in the show notes. All right, here's my appearance on the Life is Good podcast.
Chris, welcome to the show.
Rob, hey, how you doing?
Good. I'm so happy to have you because we have a great topic that I want to talk to you about. And I know with your expertise, you're going to help us shed some light on this. So people are always striving for having it all. Mm-hmm. You know, we see this in movies, in TV commercials, in shows and sitcoms, that perfect scenario where you have it all. Mm-hmm. You have a good job.
Right.
You have life at home. You have a wife or a husband. You have children, the house, the white picket fence. But sometimes we realize that obtaining that is not necessarily very easy or even realistic. So is it possible to have it all? And how do we define, I guess, having it all, right? I guess that would be one of the things where we can start off.
Yeah, exactly. That's my very first question was going to be, well, what does it mean to you to have it all? Because for some people, what it might mean is, hey, I'm a really ambitious executive. I want to be CEO of this, company or whatever. And that position is going to require you to put in 60, 70, 80 hours a week in order to be successful. And if that's what to you having it all means, you're not going to be able to have it all. You're going to be married to your job, right? The other areas of your life are obviously going to suffer in that way. There's just only so many hours in the day. Now, if having it all means to you, I want to be successful in my career, again, then it's like, okay, well, what does successful mean? Is it be able to hold a job that provides enough money to keep a roof over my head and to provide for my family's basic needs? Then now we're getting to an area where I think absolutely you can have it all if you get, so it really just depends on what it is that you're looking for. And that's not to say that you can't be fabulously wealthy and still have it all. You can. That's going to require certain ways of acquiring your income, right? So like, a lot of my clients, I do coaching for various people, and I get a lot of entrepreneurs, and there are certain lifestyle businesses you can set up where it doesn't take 60 hours a week. Heck, it doesn't even take 40. There's a famous book from Tim Ferriss, I don't know if you're familiar with it, called The 4-Hour Work Week, where supposedly you can have your job in 4 hours a week where you automate a bunch of stuff. Now, it's a little questionable that you can actually do it I don't know any entrepreneurs that are able to get by in 4 hours a week. It's more like, 20 is probably the minimum that I've seen. But if you're only working 20 hours a week, that leaves a lot of time for going out and kicking the soccer ball around with your family and having a really rewarding relationship with your wife and tennis with your buddies and, whatever it is you like to do. Right. So it's definitely within reach, but you have to get real, specific about what it is that having it all means to you. And I would say also have some flexibility as well in there. So if you're really rigid in what having it all means to you, then it's going to be more challenging. But if it's just, if you're flexible and be like, I want to be able to, be an active part in my child's life, that's different than saying like, I would like to be a stay-at-home mom or dad and yet still have, a certain degree of income and all this stuff. Right. So, you know what I mean? It's just whatever flexibility you have is going to make it more possible for you to have it all.
Yeah. It kind of becomes more of a balancing act also, I guess, trying to find what's manageable between the different things that you're doing, whether it's a job and then trying to find time to spend time with the kids, take them to the games, if they're involved in sports or in other activities, and then having time to spend with your spouse,
right?
If that's the case. And one of the things, and I've actually kind of skimmed through that book, the 4-Hour Work Week. Some of it is realistic, and others, like you said, are maybe not so easy to do with automating everything. I think with a situation like that, you kind of have to kind of be okay financially first, because a lot of that automation that is mentioned in the book costs money.
Sure.
You have to hire and outsource certain things that you do during the day to maybe someone overseas, because it's less expensive and it's cheaper, but you still have to have some sort of available income to do that. And sometimes average people don't necessarily have that ability to do that. But I've always kind of shared the philosophy of living rich, not necessarily financially, but more of like a quality of life, kind of like the things that you talked about. So, and I've kind of noticed this with people who are in sales, right? They're able to have more free time because sales are good, or they're doing well in sales, and they'll dedicate, like you said, 20, 30, 25 hours, let's say a week, to really bust their butt and get the most sales possible so that they have that free time afterwards. And so they make a nice income where it's not like crazy wealthy income, but it's enough to pay for all that they need, pay for bills, pay for living expenses, pay for food, a little bit to save. And then that free time that they have, although they're not necessarily working those times, they're making money during that time, they're spending time with their loved ones, or they're doing things that they enjoy. And it's almost like a compromise. I could work 40, 50 hours a week, but then I don't have any time left to do anything with all the money I'm making.
Right. Yep.
Whereas maybe I cut back a little bit and maybe put in 20, 25 hours a week. And it's enough to live comfortably, enough to do the things that I like. And then it's a more of a quality of life situation, I think, rather than, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And the money is there maybe, but what do you do with it afterwards?
Right. Yeah, it becomes a question of what is the money for? So the money, they've done these studies where if you're in dire straits, and you're struggling just to put a meal on the table, money will increase your happiness.
Yes.
If you're questioning whether or not you're going to be able to pay your rent and have a roof over your head and all that stuff, money will increase your happiness. But once you get your basic necessities taken care of, where you have shelter, you have food secured and stuff like that, there's really no correlation with more money adding happiness. It doesn't increase the happiness. So, what is it you're wanting with that money? And really, we've been talking about the 4-hour work week. There's some concepts in there that are really strong, and there's some areas where the book is questionable, but there's some concepts that are really strong. And one thing he talks about is being time rich as opposed to money rich.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, that's the new thing. He's like, people that are time rich, that have time to do the things they love doing, those are the truly rich people, not the ones who are maybe making, again, to go back to the executive who's working 60, 80 hours a week, and maybe he's making, $400,000 a year, but he hates his life and he doesn't have time to do anything. He's a slave to his job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, what's the money for? He doesn't actually get to spend it on the things he enjoys doing. So that's really, it comes down to time being our most precious commodity. And so the one thing that I always advise with my clients is when you're looking at having a balance in your life and knowing that time is your most precious commodity, is I say, look, let's start treating all the areas of your life like you would your job, in that, for your job, if you have stuff that needs to be done, you maybe have a to-do list, maybe you've got a time management system, you've got your projects laid out in there, you know what needs to be done, you've got things in your calendar. But in your private life, there's nothing there. It's like, so I said, start scheduling stuff in. Schedule stuff in, time for yourself. Book some time in there in your calendar for you to go for a walk with your wife, or to go play soccer with your kids, or whatever it is. Start scheduling that stuff in. Start putting into your to-do list, mixing in personal stuff that needs to be done. Okay, this is a priority for today. My priorities today are to knock this one project out for my boss by 3 p.m. today, to go spend some time with the kids, to go do things with my wife. Any, things that are maybe you wouldn't necessarily consider a project normally, start thinking about them as a project. Going on a trip to a water park on the weekend. Well, it's not just necessarily just going to the water park. Maybe you got to get tickets ahead of time. Maybe you got to your kids outgrew their swimsuits. You got to stop by and pick up a swimsuit. There's multiple steps involved. It's not just so easy as, okay, now I'm going to go to the water park. Well, that's a project once you have multiple steps involved, right? So once you start bringing everything under that umbrella, that's when you can start working it in and making these other areas of your life a priority and having that work-life balance. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I love that about scheduling things outside of work like you would do for work. So at work, you have tasks that you got to do every day, and scheduling life outside of work in the same fashion, I think is a great idea, because sometimes we kind of neglect that part. We're all about work because work is demanding. And some people, I guess average folks, work 40 plus hours a week, and they forget about me time.
Sure.
And I think that's brilliant. I think that is actually should be a way of life. So then this way, the people around you aren't, you don't forget about them.
Right.
Because I think it's very easy when you're juggling so many things to forget about the little things. And if you schedule them out, I think that's perfect. I think that should be a way of life.
Well, and there's another piece that adds to it as well, Rob. And that's once you start bringing in all of your to-dos that you have out there. You've got your honey-do list. You've got maybe your own list for yourself of things like, I want to get to the gym. I want to read this book. I want to whatever. I want to learn the guitar or whatever. Once you start bringing in all the different things that are out there, and you've got them in like a time management system, right? Where you've got, at a minimum, you've got some to-do list, right? You've got like my own personal to-do list, the to-do list I have for getting stuff done around the house, for work. At a minimum, something basic like that. Mm-hmm. Because that's not like tickling at the back of your brain, it frees you up to be really present in the moment and enjoy your time. Because what happens is, maybe you finally get a chance. You're like, oh, I'm gonna go play soccer with the kid in the backyard, right? I got a minute. This is something I've been wanting to do. I want to do it. You get out there, and what happens? You get out there, and you're thinking about, oh, you know what? The wife told me I'm supposed to stop by the hardware store and pick up some light bulbs or something. Mm-hmm. Oh, I got to do this thing for my boss. Oh, that's right. And you're not even present in the moment. You're not even enjoying the time with your child. And this happens, swap it out with any other thing. You're sitting in the boardroom in a meeting, and you're thinking about how you're supposed to pick up milk for your wife on the way home. You're picking up, you're out, you're sitting down talking with your wife at dinner and you're thinking about work or whatever. You're never actually living in the moment and enjoying that time. But once you get your tasks out of your mind and down on paper or maybe into an electronic device, we all like our devices these days. And there's some really great apps on stuff out there right now for just this sort of thing that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, that chatter in your brain kind of goes away because now your brain doesn't have to worry about it. It says, oh, Chris has got this taken care of. Rob's got this taken care of. It's in that app, right? So I don't need to keep bothering him about it, right? I can just let it go. And now you can sit there and enjoy that meal with your wife and just be really present, really interested in spending time with her and how her day went, or just fully enjoying that fun, kicking the soccer ball around, or whatever it is, right? So, does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Because, and I've seen that, and I've seen that with friends. When let's say we're all hanging out, and we're supposed to be hanging out, maybe having a beer, or watching a movie or something, and they're not there. You can tell they're somewhere else, or they forgot to send that email before they left the office, and they're on their phone sending that email or anything like that. And then even though you're there, it's like you're not, so it's almost pointless. So doing these things and getting used to them and making them a part of your life, I think are beneficial not only for yourself as an individual, but for everyone else in your circle. And they all benefit from this type of approach to organizing your life. I think it's crucial. And as people do this and they get used to it, they'll probably feel different. And then their quality of life kind of changes as well.
Yeah, it definitely lowers your stress level, which is huge for your quality of life, right? Not to mention very tangible physical effects of stress. I mean, stress has been linked to almost any disease you could name out there, of the cancer and heart disease and various things like that. But yeah, just your enjoyment in the present moment. Nobody likes to be stressed out. Yeah.
And Chris, I know you mentioned before, before we got on the air when we were talking, you have a really neat offer for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So if the listeners would contact me, and they can do that at my email is chris@choiceconversations.com. I also have a podcast. It's choiceconversations.com. They can go there. But if they email me and say, hey, I heard you on Rob's show, and I will go ahead and hook you up with a free coaching session, and I can work with you on some of these issues that like me and Rob are talking about today. I would love to do that.
So for the listeners, I invite you to take advantage of this generous offer that Chris has given us. So you'll get a free coaching session with Chris if you say that you listen to him on the show, and you can go more in depth into what we spoke about, into getting your life organized, into reaching or obtaining that ability to maybe have it all, whatever that may be for you as an individual. Chris can help you find your way and navigate through that interesting maze we call life. Chris, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know our listeners learned a lot from this session, this segment of speaking with you. And I hope they'll reach out and talk with you some more so that you can help them navigate through life.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Rob. And thank you so much for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Chris. So, again, we invite you to check out Chris's website, choiceconversations.com. Also, check his podcast out at choiceconversations.com. Chris, thank you very much. This was a lot of fun, and I'd love to have you back.
Absolutely. Anytime.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank Rob for having me on. Pretty cool. Always an honor to be a guest on somebody else's show. If you'd like to know my recommendations for the best books to read, the most influential books that I've found in my life, go to books.choiceconversations.com and sign up, and I will send those to you. Again, it's free, And it's at books.choiceconversations.com. Check it out. All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great day. Or not. The choice is yours.